Walters, good thing we are tight end you. So you and I had a conversation about big number 84, who sports the same number as one of your favorite players in Iowa history, Marv Cook. Sam Laporta, how big of an impact can he have, and how important is his health? I mean, really, this is one of the few years that I can remember, at least in recent memory, where Iowa doesn't have a standout tight end 2 or tight end 3 at this point. You hope Luke Lachey or Josiah Meeman or Elijah Yelverton can emerge there. Have heard good things about Luke, at least from Kirk in press conferences leading up to the season. But how important is Sam Laporta and his health?
I think Sam Laporta is critical to our success because it looks to me like he's equally capable in both run and passing game. He's a good, solid blocker. He's got good strength. He's a very competitive guy, but he's got soft hands too. And he understands how to be a physical player at that position, both run and pass. The question is, as you said, can we find another guy that we can trust almost as much as Sam? I've got a lot of faith in Lachey from a reception standpoint. Looks to me like he's got good songs. I haven't really had a chance to study him as a blocker. I suspect he's got some room for improvement there because he's a young player and he's still finding his way, so to speak. But we do need those guys to come through. And the thing that excites me, we have such a proud tradition at tight end. I'll promise you, when those guys walk in that tight end meeting room and see some of those former tight ends and their pictures on the wall, that gives them a little extra incentive to follow in those guys' footsteps and to be, hopefully someday, just as good as they were.
And I want to go back to the quarterback position just for a moment, Don, because I was reminded here, just in you speaking, of one of the keys for me these first 2 weeks for fall camp, and that was developing Iowa's defensive line, because it's going to be tested, I believe, by a couple quarterbacks who not only can throw the football down the field, but are very mobile in Michael Penix and Brock Purdy. Again, you've studied these guys at length. And of course, Iowa loses a lot on the defensive line from Davion Nixon, Chauncey Golston, and Austin Schulte, Jack Heflin. You can go down the list there. What do you see from the defensive line? That's been some people kind of concerned right now with the depth or lack thereof. I'm not there yet. I think that Kelvin Bell has proven himself, and of course Phil Parker along with him. They've proven to be able to develop depth in the offseason. They got a spring this year to do so. What do you see from the defensive line, especially for 2 tests early?
I think that is a concern. Last year we had the luxury of playing more than 4 down guys. This year I don't know if our depth is going to end up as good as it was a year ago. And it's especially a concern in September. If it's as warm next Saturday as it was today, that's going to be a real concern. How can those guys that start for us in the D-line, how many snaps can they play effectively? It'd be a lot to ask anybody to play a full game next weekend if it's as warm as today. So that's where your depth really comes into play, is those September games in warm weather. The last forecast I saw for next weekend included a chance of rain, but I think it was a more traditional temperature this time of the year, not quite as hot as it is this weekend.
People don't realize the black uniforms, too, I'm sure, play a huge role in body temperature, just besides the fact that you're in pads and helmets. And I think, of course, injuries are a part of fall camp. Logan Jones, I've heard, has dealt with some injuries here this August, as has Noah Shannon. So does that elevate guys behind them as far as opportunity in fall camp to develop, or is that more of a concern given the fact that those are potentially 2 of Iowa's top 5 or 6 defensive linemen?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really a balancing act. You want to prepare guys to play better football, and of course that involves some contact and practice to be able to get that done. And yet there's a point of diminishing return. You can't just go crazy in terms of contact and preparation for the season, because injuries are gonna be tied into that. So it's a fine line. You want to get them ready, and you have to get ready by practicing a physical brand of football. And yet, if you spend too much time with it, then you're putting them at risk for injury even going into the season. And obviously, if you're going to be injured this time of the year, ideally it would happen on Saturday and not during the week.